Shit's the action selection in this game. That's, where a lot of the thinking and the fun kind of comes in, I guess. It's kind of a pain in the ass solo. But again, anyhow, the Christians with their heresy had a particular interesting choice. They're both democratic nations, the only two Christian nations that are out there, the Irish and the Portuguese. Neither one wants to lose their turn to that vote. So they both have the option to put a wild card in to kind of decide what they want to do after the other Christian nation goes. Now, as it turns out, the Portuguese are going to have to go first. No, the Irish are going to have to go first because they've got the turn marker sitting on their side, which is a pity. But they'll probably both wait until civilized, unless one of them wants to discard their nation, which is possible. The Irish are doing pretty well. The Portuguese, though, well, their hold is, they've got their home outside of Europe. They're in second place right now, and if they wait long, they'll still be there. World, they're not in competition, and they're in second place for the Christianity. So it doesn't sound that great, but it is still 3 points, which is pretty rich. For the Irish, on the other hand, 1, 2, they've got 5 points banked right now because they own Britain and Ireland as well. They own everything except England in the British territories. Well, there are some sea areas that no one owns yet. But that's, and I think oh no, that's Iceland. I thought it was the Faroes. That is counted as just Europe, not part of Britain, which kind of makes sense. Anyway, just a little insight into, keeping things flexible is an advantage in this particular case that it usually isn't, where I really don't know what I'm going to pick. I've got a new empire starting, and I've got to do some thought because I drew the French as well, or I picked them up. They're the Glory pour moi, which I probably will be able to get away with purple. So far down in the line, nobody wants to really cancel their action. But, oh shit. Last turn was not a no glory turn. I gotta count glory, because everybody gets normal glory last turn. As a matter of a fact, purple could play the Glory pour moi after having picked it up because it was canceled for themselves. Oops. Coming to the core of that now, this is where we are in points, and green actually did manage to exceed. The Arabs have fallen way behind. They no longer are really scoring many points. They're not even the largest Islamic country anymore. That's Russia. So their point, I think they're down to 3. Not enough to decline with, but they're low tech. There's just not a lot going for them. I have to be careful though here, because I may want to get rid of some things. Well, Benin still needs to make a jump, but these guys can spend their $50 and get their point of glory. I don't think they're going to be, I don't see too much value to them anymore. They're a 2-point country. The problem is, do I want to decline them? Now I've got 2 good countries, the French and the Chinese. I also have the Glory pour moi, which is useful in this kind of lower value area because nobody's going to cancel it on me, so I may gain some ground on that. Green, you can see, they made up their points anyway, and now they're the leader, and everybody's got to kind of move against them. Anyway, I have to worry about whether I want to decline this and what I want to start with in the Start Empires phase. Glad I caught that. I wonder if I've done it before. Just trying to process the cards too quickly in my head, I guess. Okay, the actual age in which an empire's leaders apply. Again, to that same problem. What does it mean? I've been playing it, at least early in the game, very early, that it's the age the empire actually is in. However, as opposed to the age the world's in. If the empire has a named leader for this age, you can promote that leader. Now, I'm not sure which one makes more sense here, to tell you the truth. Does it make sense that, like the empire's characteristics, they become less valuable as time goes on? So, keeping the Arabs in age 3 doesn't make them stronger for the entirety of the game. This isn't a big deal, to tell you the truth, because most empires' leaders, they give you some potential advantages. So in this particular case, I'm looking at, geez, let's see, if I bring the French in, what would I get? Well, it's set up -3. I'm going to be at age 6 anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. So all I could get is Madame Curie to start with. But the question was, well, if I was far enough back, could I get Napoleon or Joan of Arc? I think the answer is no. I think you bring in, the problem is that it kind of conflicts with how you bring them out of play. But you bring in a leader based on the age the world is in, and they leave when your empire switches ages. There's no clarification in the rules, though, and boy, does that piss me off. What I've decided is this vibrant new German state is more than I can cope with. I'm going to hold on to the glory pour moi to try to just score my own glory this turn. Instead, I'm going to start the modern Chinese. This is terrible for the Tang. Because basically, they are the weak nation that I'm going to scoop up territory from. Might be kind of an advantage for the Russians, another target on my border. The reason this is so bad for the Tang, though, is I want cities. So I'm going to want to start grabbing their urban territory, I think. Well, no, I get a disadvantage if I go for an urban space right off. So, see, I want the surprise value. This is much more scary than the Russians are. The Russians are so far behind in technology, I think I can beat them up. The modern Chinese got a free maneuver action in here. We're kind of cool, +1 trade, etc. Initial infantry cost was 1. Ooh, I've got some more money I can spend. And 1 free maneuver. Maybe I can get some cav moving or something. Yeah, I might even be able to take this, but that looks scary. I didn't catch that cost for the infantry. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, $5 back. $4 will give me. I want to make sure a knight's the best I can do. Now I can get this horse artillery. I'll just place one of them there. I may have had enough troops to move into here, though. Let's see. I could take this and this. And this. Drive them in. I'd be at about equal with some terrain penalties, etc. I'll stay like I am. Let's move this here. All right. So anyway, I've started up a little empire here, and that gives me a $1 back. With the decision that I don't want to go apeshit all over the Tang, we kind of came to an agreement of, okay, look, you're interested in China. I'm not, even though I am China. I'm interested in Asia. You're interested in Asia too. We're going to conflict at some point. But right now, you can't attack the Russians. And if you focus, say, over here on the Khmer, while I'm focusing on the Russians, and the reason you can't attack the Russians is they have a peace treaty between them. Eventually we'll clash, but let's not fight right now. I'll let you have China as much as I can. which is to say I probably can't take Shensi, can I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I could take Shensi because this is over in the Indian territory. And I'm going to focus more on Russia, and I'm going to try to, free up India for these guys if they're going to survive, because I just don't think I can play the French and get many points off them clashing directly with the Germans. The Germans are significantly far behind the leaders as well. We're all kind of in the same boat, with blue a little ahead and red a little behind, other than those two leading powers. So let's try to equalize things, Let's not squabble among each other, but I needed this, for a basis of points, and I did need to hit some of your units, perhaps. I could have started somewhere else. I could have started here and focused more spreading east, but I think the Tang are going to be willing to accept. A quick run through the production. Oops, I haven't gotten to these. I bet you they're doing some. Yeah. Well, we can do up until then. The Arabs built up quite a large force. Now, they're so far behind in technology, but still, numbers do matter in this game. What are the Germans up to, if not production? Trade in progress. A lot of people doing trade in progress, so we're going to see a lot of collisions there, I think. The Russians did production, built up a large force. The Tang, I forgot to put their markers down. I, for some reason, got the blue markers down, but not the red ones. They also wanted to do production. They have pretty much filled out their quota. They've still got a pile of artillery and older cav available, but and there could be an argument that, hey, they should have done a trade, but they didn't have the cards really for that. To get themselves to the newer, even more improved weaponry. They've got kind of a problem with frontage. If they heed their alliance and leave these modern Chinese alone, they're going to have only this really thin trickle going down here. They didn't make any kind of agreement with the Indian regarding the Indians to get themselves down at the Khmer, and the possibility of naval action, which could put them in conflict with, well, almost an assurance of naval action, which could put them very easily into conflict with Java. But in order to finish the Khmer off, they feel like they are going to need that. They, don't have a lot of troops they can move, but they can move the boats into position and do a lot of damage with them. Fortunately, I have the sniffles, and that makes doing these videos much, much more difficult than most things in life from the sniffles. Like, I can do just about anything, but talking on the video, even just playing the game standing up, is kind of annoying. Anyway, we did and that's why I kind of slowed down last night. We did the trade in progress. We had a few of these. Benin kicked some off. You can see they made some success. They picked on the Indians. We also had the Javanese, who also picked on them. They failed, and that pushes these guys forward. Someone picked on the Russians, though. The Germans. The Germans did a trade in progress against the Russians, and they got a success, allowing them to move forward. It's important for them to take trade in progress because they want the oil fields, which I believe can only be scored in Era 7. So, they want to start moving in that direction so they can get glory. Even if they and other people don't particularly want to end the game, they do want to, score as many points as possible, and it doesn't really hurt to be in that position. Except that someone else could, play the internet on them, for example, and finish the game for them. Or trade with them and try to push them above. That's a tricky maneuver, though. But it's possible, I guess. All right, we're on the maneuver. Coming back after a couple of days off. One for the illness, and then I got myself hooked into a computer game. I've been playing it before, but I played it pretty much all through. The illness and the next day. let's see. We're starting the maneuver, or we halfway through the maneuver phase. The Irish chose not to do maneuver. They have a wild card on them. They pretty much decided there's someone else who has the wild card as well, with the intention of waiting them out. I don't remember who it is, probably the Portuguese, yeah, who will be going after them. So they pretty much decided, okay, well, I'll do whatever I want to do right now because I'm not. Actually, it doesn't. No, it doesn't matter. It's that stupid religious heresy, which. Well, is it a heresy? Yeah, which they throw their turn away if they don't. But so there's no reason not to wait until the last item, or maybe just not do anything. Of course, if they don't do anything, if it looks like they're going to discard, the Portuguese will probably play their turn to see if they can get rid of the heresy instead. Okay, so our first maneuver was over here with the Khmer, and they mainly spent it on naval expansion, although they did take the Celebes. And they actually they were in the Bay of Bengal as well. The Indians came back at them. We'll take a look at that in a moment. The English went next, and they kind of spread up here. They took Scotland, getting a glory from it, and they're allowed to attack the Muslims down in naval action. They just can't take land areas from them. So they're positioning themselves to fight the Irish down here. They really want to fight brown and green, so hitting brown was not terribly bad for them there. Then the Indians are next, and they spread out more towards the world point value, and they're also positioning themselves to get, they're still in position to get the point from India as well. So they're kind of hoping they can score a few points here. They got at least 2 minimum right now. That seems pretty safe. Not worth discarding at that. They did take out the Bay of Bengal from the Khmer, which may mean that the Khmer lost a point for Southeast Asia. I think. I think they're actually tied now. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now they're in the lead still. Great. And that puts it over in the backside of things, and we got the Latin Americans. They're going to spread out and probably capture some. And the Latins spread out mostly peacefully. They're interested in cities, so they want to make sure they grab that before somebody else does, because then it would get destroyed if they took it back. They did attack the Portuguese here, but nothing too big. Their main goal is to feather their own nest in points. They don't see a point in casting themselves against anyone else when they're in the last place. Then for the Persians, they went for pretty much put everything they had into Egypt and managed to succeed. If they had failed there, it would pretty much mean the end of Persia. It may anyway, but there's kind of this game of chicken going on here. Who wants to discard their empire first? Because neither of these two is going to do, the Persians nor the Arabs, is going to do terribly well in the future as long as they're both there. But if one disappears, there's a good chance the survivor will do quite well. Maybe with the advantage slightly in Asia's, in the Arabs' hands, simply because being such a large Islamic nation, they crank a lot of points off that. But they're no longer the biggest. We've got real challengers between Russia and the English, where maybe it's not that clear that they should be worth all that much. Some interesting value, a couple of cities out here that nobody's got right now. And then, of course, this one in disorder. Benin's going to have to do something about that. That moves us on to the destiny phase. We're going to be taking things kind of slowly at this point, just trying to ease back into the game. It's hard. The combat here, I had to use a Schwerpunkt card, which allowed me to double one round of combat. There was an elephant in there, and I was hitting with Cav, a couple of Cav units, so that was kind of a risky situation, but I ended up winning both rounds that were. So after a Destiny action, in which of course everybody pretty much threw away most of their hand, the only two people doing Civilized were the two people under the Heresy. I think they're the only Christians. The first draw was a 5-point card. We figured, the Irish figured, well, you know, we're not willing to, it's progress we're spending, but we're not willing to spend progress to make sure that the Portuguese get a turn. Portuguese probably would have offered, you know, hey, I'll take 3 hits if you take 2 or something like that. The next card was a 6, and still the Irish are kind of looking at this as, well, you know, I'm ahead in a lot of ways. One of my biggest things is to be the biggest Christian nation. It really doesn't help me much to not have this heresy. My main source of points is in keeping a stasis and between me and Portugal. My other points, well, the only one I've kind of got an iffy state on is the British Isles themselves, and I've still got the advantage there, so I'm not in too big a hurry. The English aren't terribly concerned with that. Nobody else really is except me, so I'm okay letting it pass. And the Portuguese certainly aren't going to eat, you know, 5 or 6 points here on the progress track. The Irish are also looking at, hey, I'm going forward. The Portuguese would gladly go back 1 space, but any more than that, they're actually costing themselves something, and that's kind of what the Irish are looking at. You know, this doesn't really hurt that much, except I don't get turns, but I don't really need turns. There's cool stuff I could do on my turns, I guess. Civilized actions, obviously, I can score victory points on, the glory points, perhaps, but otherwise, and those are becoming kind of tough to score. Even at the highest levels, most of those counters are out on the map at this point. So it's kind of a, okay, well, do what you can, but Civilized isn't going to give you a lot of bonus points easily. I don't think any empires are discarding. I got to look at some people's glory points. The Irish have this, hey, maybe there will be half as much glory. I don't think they're going to do that. They're pretty happy with the 2 green factions. And then over here, I've got the double the glory for everyone over on the English side. And the Javanese. I think we had already calculated out, though, Java's not getting this. England, probably not getting too many points. They are going to get the big 3 points outside Europe, though. Let's see. That's probably a 2-point country. I don't see any real reason to play it. And that means the bad augury is not going to get played either. So, nobody's got anything exciting. We'll finish up the turn. And as we push to the end of the turn, here's where our scoring ends up. Green and brown in the lead, with a good commanding lead there. Brown hasn't lost a lot of ground yet, even though their empires are kind of stymied. And to tell you the truth, Green's empires are also not really able to move. Obviously, the Irish haven't been doing anything, but I think the Russians also didn't really manage. They haven't wiped out India yet. That's basically their goal. The modern Chinese, not big enough yet to score big points. Latin America, a little behind because of the philosopher over here in the natives. A little behind their score. They're tied in terms of total areas, but they lose out that tie and end up only getting 1 point for North America. Obviously, some of their other big things, the cities and money, these are big things also to the modern Chinese. New states aren't going to be able to do that very easily. Not if there are old states out there that have been civilizing and everything like that. So, you know, you got things like the Khmer with a 5-point city that just blows away, you know, anything that these newer states can put together. Blue actually made some pretty good ground this turn, I think. The Persians, with their 1 point per wheat, are actually producing pretty good points. They get 1 for their home area and 2 more. It's not fantastic, but you can see if they can get rid of the Arabs, maybe some good things could happen down there, where they'd be able to attack into Russia and get a good claim in Asia or whatever and get more points. It's tough for them to grow in a lot of ways, though. Unless they can become a big empire, this is where they stop at 3. Now, 3 is not bad for something that dinky, but still, the Khmer are also kind of dinky, but are pulling in their 4 points because of the monuments situation. Meanwhile, why you don't want to knock the Arabs out, I think they're still the second biggest, and I don't remember if they were or not, but that's 5 points for them. If they don't have that second most, they're at 4, but with some possibility for growth, although their position on the progress table makes it harder and harder to keep pushing forward. Speaking of which, the Tang really have to bump themselves out of there, or else they're going to lose some of their big point makers. Red's not doing well at all. It's not like anybody's going to compete with them to stop them directly, but people might inadvertently pass them up. And their points are at 4 right now. They're not getting anything for size in Asia. Forgot again about being able to spend money for glory. This really affects Benin, so I want to jump back and take care of that. They've passed the Renaissance barrier, so I'm going to grab a point of glory. That puts me up to the 100 spot. There's no bonus for that. It's not like the game ends when you hit that or anything. It's all based on the progress track or the interwebs. And the reason that was particularly important is Benin's down to really 2 victory points with little chance of getting more per turn. So it seems like time to go away. But they do have the one advantage that they get points for winning trades. I have a good trade card in hand. This 7-point card. I don't think I have anything that's going to help me gain a trade, win the trade beyond the 7-point card, but that's a kind of nice thing. So maybe I can get some points off that, and if I succeed with that, then I'm getting more glory. I've got a couple of countries in here that I could play. The Siamese, who start with 15 bucks down in Siam, and not a lot of prospect that I see. And the Vikings and Danes, we saw them before, again 15 bucks. They were good when they came out. They can play up to the 7th era, but not very interesting in this particular situation as far as I can see. So I'm just not seeing much potential that looks better than Benin right now. The only real thing is, I need to end the game while I'm in the lead, and that's hard to do. Well, that's impossible to do if you don't have a high-tech country. But I can't see falling behind at this point. I'm not that much in the lead over green. I just can't see trying to push things to get myself a high-tech society and end up maybe not making as many points. It's too close right now. Alright, I'm picking the trade because that's the only way they get more points. I don't think they can expand in this world very well. I gotta pick things for the Arabs and for the rest of the country. It's looking to me like the modern Chinese were a bad trade-off for the Hausa. The Hausa weren't doing terribly well, but at least they were doing damage to someone. And they were scoring, I think, more points than the modern Chinese seem capable of. It's great to be up here in the tech level, but I'm facing the Tang. Granted, I made a deal with them, but they're up there in it. And neither red nor purple seems to have a real way of getting a grip on the tan and brown player anymore. which means, yeah, I can bash these Russians, perhaps, maybe protect my Indians, but I'm going to have a tough time being able to do anything about the Arabs, and certainly Benin seems to be off in its own little free world. Although the English can sink their boats. No, the English, yeah, the English are Islamic, as is Benin, so they can't really conflict without a penalty to the aggressor, other than I've only been looking at my new cards when I pulled the cards to decide what would happen at the end of the turn. The Glory pour moi did not get played. That means it would have gotten canceled. There was a cancellation card, so it's not a terrible thing to hold on to it. That cancellation card hasn't gone away, though, so it's becoming less and less likely. I was looking to see, is there something I can replace one of these guys with if I decline an empire? And yeah, I still have the French, but I chose not to do that. One thing, this is a tough game to come back to in the midst of. It's a matter of all the little crap you got to remember, which makes it hard no matter what for me. And I think, if you tried to separate this and play it, say, in 2-3 sessions, a week or so apart, it would be hellish, because you'd have to go through this whole learning process again. And honestly, my initial learning process of the first couple turns, hey, what works, what doesn't, some of that's patterned in, but some of it as in, hey, what the hell does this advance do? Well, I kind of remember it if I'm playing continuously for, a lot of time and paying attention to it. After I look it up 3 times, I kind of remember at least, I don't know, for a few turns, But now I know nothing, and I have to look everything up again. And also I have lost some of my patterns for trying to remember the cards, but that's really a solo-based thing. Okay, as I kind of fantasize about the game a little bit, something kind of odd comes up to mind, and I'm surprised I haven't noticed this before, or mentioned it at least. I'm sure I noticed it. You've got kind of more advanced technologies here with these riflemen and whatever, and then you've got swordsmen in here. Now, riflemen show up at the end of the Renaissance, so you can kind of look at that as maybe this is, the musket improvement, and here we've still got, pike units or something like that being indicated. Or you can kind of take it as more abstract, because to tell you the truth, you could end up with, a situation where a nation like this still has these infantry, hasn't gone through a civilized action yet, but has their upgrade, which is what, the motorized infantry, in place. And it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me to have such backwards units. It would be more expensive to maintain such units than to disband them and replace them with a smaller, more effective army of modern equipped troops. I don't know what to say about things like that. You could kind of suggest that they're just, contingents that aren't well trained and prepared, kind of like the old Russian infantry armies that that were thrown in World War II that really didn't get adequate training nor adequate equipment, or like the Chinese armies in the same period, where maybe, 6 bullets per man per month or something like that. You can't really fight under those conditions at anything like effectiveness. So it could be that kind of, hey, the army isn't completely integrated and up to snuff, but it doesn't indicate that there are Roman legionaries in with Napoleonic soldiers in the least. Right, production. Big production turn by Germany, and a number of other countries have done it here too. The English did one not as big because they wanted to save some bucks. Now, they get victory points for having the most money in the game, but they also have a mine in their hands. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop playing because I got guys cutting trees outside. I hope they're done by the time my interview comes up today. cut them down for this video aspect, but I can't even think while that. I hate power tools. I really hate them. I try not to use them because the noise just grates into my brain. Anyway, the English didn't build as much as they could have, and they built a decent amount of boats because they have the first boat thing, but they also are Islamic, so they want to conquer territories, and they particularly want to try to take them from the Irish because the Irish are ahead. They can't take them as easily from the Arabs or Benin because they're Islamic. And I want to get to that. I have a religious point to make in a moment. The Satavana, they couldn't build much. As a democracy, they pay half as much. They did a production, built the rest of their army. They need to, in order to, A, defend themselves, and also maybe fling back the Russians a little bit, but they've got a serious problem with, well, actually, they can't attack the Russians safely unless the Russians attack first, which won't happen. Well, they don't get to fight this turn. If the Russians move in and attack this turn, I'll be allowed to attack back safely. But it gives me a good pot of money towards buying another glory. I have to get to 50 to buy anything with them. They're not going to make it past the Renaissance anytime in the near future. On red, Latin America. So this is where I haven't even finished the turn because of the damn buzzing. This is where I started thinking about this. They built a lot of trucks. They made their technological boost to there, and now they're far and away the most powerful technology in South America, certainly, and in the Americas as a whole. So that should be to some advantage to them getting control of their continent. The thing that I wanted to bring up was, it seems strange to me, and maybe to you, that, like technology, that religion and government type isn't inherited by the states kind of forming out of something. So this kind of formed out of the Portuguese. Its technology is way higher, which is weird. Blame the Chinese for that. But for whatever sense you can make it out of that. But likewise, you kind of feel like, well, Latin America rose out of Spain as a revolt, and they were very Catholic. Now, it's quite possible that these guys, as soon as they do a civilized action, they can absorb one of their neighbors, which, if they don't completely subsume their prior owner, is likely to still be alive somewhere nearby, so that they can pick up his, either his government type or his religion. But it could take, what really amounts to quite a long period of time for that to pass. I don't know how long a turn's supposed to represent. There's no real fixed amount to them. But it feels like, it could be decades or whatever. And it just doesn't make sense. And you might never do that civilized action, yet you've sort of formed something new by coming out of it and throwing away the religion and throwing away the cultural aspects. That bothers me somehow. I'm not quite sure what I'm asking for here because, for example, an Islamic revolt against an Islamic state would be penalized right from the beginning by attack, which would kind of suck. So, like these Persians, who may well be Islamic, just as these may well be Christians, they're just not as Islamic or as Christian enough a society to follow the dictates that religion and really governmental forms generally tend to convey advantages on the status quo, if, they're accepted by the status quo. So, for example, Christianity was a disintegration factor to the Roman Empire until, some people argue that it stayed as one, but until it becomes the state religion, at which point it becomes wedded to the empire, in effect. All right, that, I guess, I gotta finish up, see if I've got any production here. I'm sure I do. I think the Persians maybe doing it. Nope. They're civilizing for some reason. Maybe I've gone through them all. I know the Irish can't. Nope. Okay, so I did go through them all. I just didn't have any towards the back end. All right, well, we'll be taking a break. Well, the noisemaker. Partway through the trade in progress phase, played a number of them off. Well, two of them. Benin went first, and they picked on purple. Purple's actually not the strongest. The Indians, they're not necessarily the best thing to pick on, but they're close. And I don't know if I made the best choice there. Benin's in era 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they really can't reach too many places. Maybe they could get 1, 2, 3, 4, the Native Americans. Anyway, they ended up winning the trade and pushing themselves forward, grabbing a point of glory, 2 points of glory over here from winning the trade, which is why they did it. And then, this is what's kind of interesting. They traded a big card to purple, which meant the next guy who got the trade, the Khmer, don't want to trade with purple. Well, I found someone better to trade with, the Javanese. First of all, although they are someone who likes to trade because they get to keep both cards when they lose a trade, their modifier is at -1. It was at +1 at one point in the game, although maybe not really. Like, I was judging that by their technology rather than the world progress, and I think that doesn't make sense. I think it's got to be the world progress for these bonuses. Damned if that makes sense either, but I don't know. Anyway, so they were at -1 and another -1 for being Confucianist, so they're a good trade target. They're actually fairly far ahead, so some people might want to skim off them. I don't know if there's anybody close to them. Dark purple is. The Russians probably can't get to them. Others can get, 2 technology off them pretty easily at the cost of completely losing a card, which is kind of cool. Anyway, they did that, and I don't know what else, because the damn saws went on again. And the Tang also pick on the Javanese, giving away another good card with the 2-point bonus. Actually, more than that. Whoa, capitalism. I get something for that. So I won by 1 point, and I get a point of glory as well. So I get a point of gold and a point of glory for that. There's the glory. What about the gold? Can I take it from Java? Does Java have money? They do not. For dark red, if I can find my piece. And there we go. That's one problem with the white core. It's hard to determine, if a stack has many colors in it, where that color is to hunt for it. If you stack things neatly, which I like to do but don't really succeed in very often, it's actually almost impossible to see what the colors of the other counters are. Again, that's usually not a big deal in games that Australian Design comes up with, right? But on the other hand, in this particular game where you've got things on a track that's shared, it does end up being yet another little problem with these components. Another one was, I think I mentioned this, the white core have a tendency to lose a piece off, they have the tendency to lose the backing off a piece. And I've got at least one thing in the black counter mix. I don't know if it was misprinted or if things had fallen off and I put them and I glued them back on the wrong place. It's been a while since I clipped my counters and would have noticed such issues. But there's one counter that has, or 2 counters that have the wrong back on them. and I suspect it's my fault, but it would have never happened with most types of counter technology. You know, the stock that most counters are printed on doesn't fall apart unless you throw it in water. Arabs are largely looking at destroying the Persians. They see the Persians as the big threat to their being able to survive and produce as a good point. So they've taken a maneuver turn. Now, I've chosen not to use a mass migration. That would allow me to shift a lot of forces. Might be kind of pleasant because I've got this rare conjunction in my hand too. Where I could just sweep everything out of territories that it currently holds in order to launch, you know, more attacks, maybe take out the Persian capital here. You know, I'm going to do this. I'm going to play the mass conjunction, or mass migration, to do so, because that allows me to launch an attack here as well. I don't have to stay in Asia Minor, so I can throw another navy into one of these attacks. What about here? 1, 2, 3. Not terribly valuable. I want to hold on to my forts, though. I might give up the Greek fort there. I don't see a way I can hold that. And I'll grab the Hausa capital here. Well, I don't really want to do that. I'll tell you why. These points may be available to Benin and more useful to them, and I don't want to be in competition with Benin if they start falling back in terms of the Africa value. I actually kind of don't even really want this, but there's nowhere that I can go safely unless I carry them on this boat. That gives me the invasion penalty, but that's okay. I think. I don't really like that because that's a couple of strength points that gets added if I do an invasion. I think an invasion only counts if you carry ground troops with you that you can land navies without. Anyway, the idea here, this fort goes away because I'm not going to be in it anymore, is now I can use the rare conjunction to make another attack, and see, I'm not going to be able to win this fight. I don't want to do this. And then I can send one unit into Egypt and use the treachery card to win Egypt. There'll be nowhere to retreat to if I did things right. And that'll allow me then to also spread out with a maneuver and retake some of the territory I lost. It sucks to lose that Greek fortress, but that's okay. I don't think that fortress is going to do me a lot of good at this point. All right. Let's resolve all these attacks. See if blue has any useful defensive cards, but there usually aren't. I see an interesting effect when poor technology meets good technology. What do we have here? We're attacking here with 4 units. I threw them all into the battle because I drew a lousy card. I'm lucky that my opponent also drew a kind of lousy card, because when I look at this, it's 5, 6, 7, 8 for the terrain, 9, 10 for technological difference, 13. So here I've got 3, 4, 5, because I'm reduced to the mountains, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's a tie. Both sides are completely destroyed by that battle. Learning my lesson in this battle and this battle, in terms of not committing too many of my troops because they all got wiped out. I used my numbers. I had severe numerical superiority in some cases to fight the first round, pass on it essentially, only throw 1 unit or whatever in, and then win the second round with less. This one actually I got very lucky with. I I came out with a tie after having thrown all but one of my units in, when if I had lost, I probably would have lost with this even doubled. You should either throw very little in or everything in, is kind of the issue here. Anyway, the Arabs are in a lot worse shape. I feel like I have to do the rare conjunction, but I'm not sure I have the troops that I had hoped to have. I have gained some glory off this, and maybe I'm best off doing a production turn, but that allows some powerful positions to be maintained by the Persians. Alternatively, I could do the rare conjunction to make the attack into Egypt, but there's not a lot of spreading out I can do. I can get some water positioning there, and that's about it. I no longer have the mass migration in effect. I can grab Illyria. There's a little tiny land border there, I think. I think that's my best move, rather than the production, is to knock out this big stack with the treachery card. A couple of fights with kind of unfair advantages for the attacker. Blitzkrieg used here, where the leaders get to count as both strategists and tacticians. Any leader does. So quick advances, boom, boom, as well as up here, giving Java now control of Southeast Asia, I believe, with those hits against the Khmer. That's worth a point swing in both directions. Gray's not really a problem, you can see in terms of victory points, but this is the only way that yellow had of gaining a lot of points. And you do always want to kind of feather your own nest in this game. Next was the modern Chinese, who advanced here using this I Spy card, which allows them to peek at the opponent's conflict resolution card before deciding how many troops to put. That's a huge advantage, because the attacker usually brings better troops into line. The only question is, does he guess right? Does he commit, heavily when the other guy commits heavily, or does, if the other guy commits lightly and he commits with everything or nearly everything, he can win a round but then lose the whole battle due to that. So being able to peek, and it's during all the conflict resolutions, during all the battles during a conflict resolution cycle. Unfortunately, you didn't have enough troops to really push too far, and he's also extending 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 territories in China. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, his Chinese territory, which the Tang are okay with this, but he can't go any further. In fact, the Tang have kind of a problem in that they can't attack the Russians, remember. But the Tang are interested in China. It's worth a point to them. So they want to make sure they don't lose that. Purple's willing to cut this deal. They're, working at the back end. So this is really the only way of taking out those Russians. And he really needs to take them out for his Indians to keep surviving. He's got kind of a nice operation going with, defenses on of his own people next to him, and then the Tang who are allied with him. So he can press this attack against the Russians. Seems really unlikely that the Khmer are going to throw too much into trying to get this location. The Native Americans spread out and got themselves the big points for the Americas again. Now we're on the Russians, and they have a maneuver, and man, they're in trouble. They had built up kind of a nice concentration of troop. They had all their units on the board except for their navies. They have no place to build navies, so that wouldn't really help. Now, they got a few problems. One, they just don't have enough troops to take on the forces that are arrayed against them. Also, some of those forces are quite a bit more advanced. Obviously, they can pick on the Indians, but that's about it. But the Indians have built up a fair amount of force. The modern Chinese have done enough damage to them that they don't have as much force to throw against the Indians as they had hoped to. Other alternatives are to spread out for territory. They could do that pretty cheaply. They're interested in territory, especially Europe, Asia. They could get some additional points there if they spread, say, either in either direction. Right now, they're not first in Asia anymore. I think they're second, but I'm not even sure of that because we've got such expansion here by Java and the Tang. I feel like I have to move against something. I can't move against the Arabs, even though they're cranking up some significant points here, and I would like to hit them. I can't do that without hurting myself. So, it looks like I pretty much have to go with what I planned on, but it's not a very good plan anymore. Picked only one place to hit, which was down here. That succeeded, barely. Went several rounds. The Russians disordered at the end of it, actually, with their large force. They threw everything in. The draw was tied. Both got a 4 card. I think they won by 1 point in that final round. So they ended up taking that space, which gets them up to the 100 glory as well. And got rid of that forum marker, which I put out in the ocean for no good reason. And that's going to go down to a 1. They're no longer going to have a capital. And it's beginning to look iffy about India surviving. This is their location, so they're going to be at -1 from that. I'm not sure that they're top in India. I think they are, so that evens it out. But they're probably not in the first couple for the world, although that's hard to tell with the way the Arabs went. That's the end of maneuver then. Civilized actions are all kind of backloaded in the order. The Portuguese drew a 5-point card. Nobody's willing to pay off that in terms of progress. Too many levels. Then the Persians got a civilized action. Now they played the socialism card. The problem with that is it creates disorder. Okay. Unfortunately for them, they also had just rule, which would clear all the disorder out of their areas, but they couldn't play it because they didn't have a leader yet. Socialism's also going to allow them to buy units more cheaply, and they ignore a number of different effects here. They have really no penalty to it. So, as a government effect, it's kind of nice. They picked up Hinduism as their religion. Now, I don't know if that has any effect when you're socialistic. They can ignore the effects of any religion they have except during harvesting glory. With how weak the Persians are, that +1 may matter that Hinduism gives you. Remember, Hinduism has kind of a, hey, if you do really, a balancing factor to it. If you do really poorly in the glory point, if you have 1 or 0, you get a point. If you do well, 5 or more, which is really unlikely, you lose a point of glory. So all I got was 1 point of glory. I would have liked to do the just rule, but at least I have it in my hand. I can clear the effects of the socialism cheaply with another civilized action. I have this religious leader. I don't know what they do. They provide some of the effects. They may actually clear the unrest. During destiny, they can discard weird, and they can remove heresy with any civilized action, and their empire's immune to religious strife. Gee, I wonder if I have a religious leader. No. In either of these, I have leaders, but they're not religious. Now, the final thing is, we go to the wild card for the Irish. At 4 points, now I gotta think real hard. Do I want to pay the progress at this point? These guys are going next. Both can spend 2. How big a deal is that? Well, if the Irish spend, they're going to lose their po' boy over there. By dropping down below universal suffrage, which I can't remember what it does either. So I got to look that up, because maybe it has an effect, and I'll only remember it by looking it up every time. Again, all capitalist, democratic, and socialist empires with Renaissance increase the income by 1. I don't think I'm any of those, but God, I haven't been taking that into account, that's for sure. There's just so much shit in this game that you gotta remember. Are we willing to lose our dude? We'd lose our heresy if we went back. Yeah, that wouldn't really help. We lost it by going forward, which means none of this should have happened, and it's already gone. I've been penalized. Oh, Jesus Christ, I got no idea what's going on here. It should have gone away, I think. Let's look up heresy. That should have happened last turn, and it's my own fault. Like in the earlier game things, I knew that. No, it doesn't look like it does get removed. Okay, so that didn't... A lot of these things get removed if you go into another era. It doesn't look like heresy does. I think we're not willing to pay. It's basically, hey, Portugal, do you want to pay to have a turn? Because I don't really need my turns and you really need yours. And... now they're not willing to pay all four. And the Irish aren't willing to take any hits because that would sink them down and lose them a religious leader. Whereas next turn they might be willing to take one, you know. And the Portuguese certainly will take one. They've just been getting really bad draws that nobody's willing to absorb the cost of. All right, now I start looking through all the cards again and see about progress and end things off. Purple played the Glory pour moi card. They only gained 2 of their Satavana. They're not in a great position to take advantage of this, but they prevented everyone else from gaining. Then they tried, and nobody stopped them because, okay, there's people who could have maybe done well, but the people with the stopping cards, well, there's the Bah Humbug, which prevents everyone from getting glory. No reason to spend that on this. The Bad Auguries could have blocked it immediately. But, you know, neither yellow nor gray are in terribly good situations for scoring. Although yellow's got to be pretty happy about having extended their influence here. And gray, well, not too bad, but they're in kind of a... they feel like they're kind of in decline turn here, and this isn't a building turn. So, we're not too upset about it either. Yellow probably had the best move to do so with the Javanese. They were kind of interested in that. But the English aren't really cranking points yet. So, hey, this is a turn, we'll let it go by. Of course, it probably gets pulled out, maybe not next turn, but the turn after. It ends up back in the deck. We have a very short discard deck right now. But when they tried to Vizier it, at that point, Gray stepped in and said, no, next turn I'm going to be doing well. I'm not going to allow you to pick that card back up. So they prevented that with the Strange Omen. So here's where we end up. Purple only gathered itself up to being tied with for last. And we have our brown and green. I'm going to put these guys up here just because the board is so crowded number-wise in the locations that they're in. That'll help keep a perspective on things. Ooh. Purple can't spend. Nobody else has 20. Purple hasn't reached the Renaissance here, so they can't spend their stuff. And we move to another turn as we push this onto the gray. And yeah, you know, it seems like there's not a lot of game left here, you know. We're getting towards the end. But remember, sometimes it takes forever for things to move here. This is kind of clogged compared to some of the eras back here where a lot of advances were taking place. And red has no real desire to push this much further. They don't want empires able to start in era 7 where they can just slap down, internet. Because radio's already out, so I think internet's the next thing that can go down. They don't want somebody else to just do that. The danger, of course, is, well, gray is not too far, but gray is also not 7 points. What they really want to make sure is that tan and green don't get up to that level. Of course, if they start a new empire that's only a couple points behind, they can boost themselves up and end the game pretty quickly. And right now, the two of them are close enough that that 7-point bonus is enough to differentiate who wins the game, right? Whew. So it's possible that we could come to a period where it's close to the ending. but Red's doing everything they can to prevent themselves from losing and trying to maybe boost their own points. But, you know, it's hard to do both, right? But it's easier to not worry about pushing the progress and get victory points than it is to try to arrange for the end of the game. All right, you know, what I'm just saying, though, is I have no idea how much longer this is going to take. This could take several more turns, or I don't think anybody's planned for it, but it's possible that if somebody had the right cards or something in their hand, they could actually engineer a victory pretty quickly among these two. No one else is in the range to do so, so no one else is going to try to end the game. People who aren't trying to end the game, and Red, I think, was in the position where they were holding an internet card. I don't know how many there are, though. I don't think the manifest tells you how many of each card there are. Maybe some of these do. I don't see anything that seems to say how many of each artifact there are. This gives the leaders. This shit gives something else. I don't know. Here we go. So here it tells you what the cards do, but it doesn't tell you how many of each there are. That would be a nice addition to that particular player aid. But, you know, it would be nice if stuff like that was published in the game, because it is almost unplayable the way I'm doing it.